One, two, three, four.
Hello, you're listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. We are a general interest independent bookstore located in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles, California. This year, because of the coronavirus pandemic, we've had to close our store and cancel in-person events. But SKYLIT is your neighborhood bookstore, and we are finding ways to create community even while we're far apart. In the coming weeks, we'll be putting out lots of new audio content to help you discover new books, connect with authors, and check in with your favorite booksellers. To learn more about how you can help keep SKYLIT alive, please visit our website at skylitbooks.com or check out our social media accounts on Twitter and Instagram. You can subscribe to the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome back to SKYLIT, the SKYLIT Books podcast series, where we talk to authors all over the world. We bring them to you in your room, in your headphones. We're so excited today. We have another great conversation coming up for you. I didn't introduce myself. My name's Maddie Gobbo, the events manager, but you know that if you're listening to the podcast because I'm on the podcast all the friggin' time. But here I am again today with Daniel W.K. Lee and Shane Lukas. I'm going to read their full bios in just a moment, but hello and welcome to the podcast, Daniel and Shane.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for being here. All right, so Daniel is a poet, so we are going to have a conversation about his new book of poetry today. He's going to read us some poems, and he and Shane will be in conversation. And we are looking forward to that. So I'm going to go ahead and read the bios, and then I will get out of the way so these two can start talking. Daniel W.K. Lee is the author of The Anatomy of Want, published in November 2019 by Rebel Satori Press. A third-generation refugee, he was born in Kuching, Malaysia, raised in Chicagoland, grew the fuck up in New York City, and now resides in the magical city of New Orleans with his aesthetic powerhouse of a dog, Camden. He earned his MFA in creative writing at the New School and has been widely published in online and print publications, including the Lambda Literary Award-nominated anthology Takeout, Queer Writing from Asian Pacific America, the Lambda Literary Award-winning anthology I Do, I Don't, Queers on Marriage, and most recently, Love Jets, Queer Male Poets on 200 Years of Walt Whitman, as well as Berkeley Poetry Review, Floating Bridge Review, White Stag, 14 Hills, and the UK's Oxford Poetry and Agenda. Find out more about him at danielwklee.com. Shane Lukas is a joy-fueled hyperqueer shaped by 30 years of commitment to community organizing and creativity, as well as gratitude to be persistently learning from artists and activists how to fight for and embrace equity. In addition to performing across the country as a spoken word artist, including the National Slam Circuit, his written work has appeared in numerous books and publications, including Bullets and Butterflies, Revolutionary Voices, and Hoes, Hookers, Call Girls, and Rent Boys, professionals writing on life, love, money, and sex. With decades of award-winning experience in graphic design, art direction, user experience, and strategy, Shane Lukas is now the creative solutions specialist leading A Great Idea, an agile, empathy-led, content-led, LGBTQ+ owned agency powering brands for companies and organizations across the country. Learn more at shanelukas.com. All right, Daniel and Shane, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm
I know,
kind of
it's so
nervous.
It's so weird hearing our bios read out. It sounds so strange. I've known you for decades now, so it feels weird hearing your bio read out, but you are amazing. So I'm so glad to be joining you today.
I love this. I love that. I think it's almost 2 decades of knowing each other, and now we get to have a conversation about the craft, and really kind of engaging in that way for the first time. And really, other than sharing each other's poems, talking about the work. I mean, this is going to be fun, I think.
Especially
I'm nervous, though. I am nervous, even though I've known you for so long. And
it may have been decades, but that's amazing because you're only 25, and I find that is already just a phenomenal. Okay, maybe not 25, but close.
Come on.
And it is really a gift to connect with you about this book. You know, we haven't discussed it in detail, like you said. So I'm just excited to share with listeners a little bit from Anatomy of Want. Would you be able to share, maybe kick us off with a centerpiece of the collection?
Sure. Let's maybe the title poem.
I'm good with that one.
Yeah, let's rock that roll. Anatomy of Want. Alas, I have found you nowhere near those torpid cities as far as Kuching that I crossed like some martyr dragged down from paradise. Along the roads between hamlets built on whispers, the armless world seemed to applaud mockingly for all the rummaged geographies left beneath my heel. Perhaps you fancied me overturning the Mediterranean and Pacific, mining the graves of other men's ineloquent desires, in search of you, who made foolishness my vocation, while I wrote missives to unnamed gods, protesting your discretion to ride the downtown 9 train, while I silently sobbed on the uptown. But alas, I have found you where you always were, harbored in those strings, those no strings attached strings, those umbilical strings that gave life to poems of mourning, poems of lust, poems of surrender, of retaliation, of rebellion, tomorrow's poems, yesterday's, and even that short provocative one born days ago for the first poet I ever kissed, whose red hair and fucking are other poems awaiting paper beds. There, behind me, I drew your ghostly curtains and saw your irises grinning, transforming into all the eyes I have ever coveted. But your still obscure anatomy, safely guarded among those strings like a sultan, was aware of why I could never meet men and not insist on strings. Strings make men unordinary. They tow us along so men can catch us dreaming of them after dinner, leash us so we may crawl in and out of their voices. They leave faith unnecessary to believe an untimely reply more than suggests rejection of our affection, and yet ascend friendship into a worthwhile consolation. Oh, the theater we freely give you, you who can afford to be smug in your house, who need not maps to return there. We're poorly equipped to sever your home, even at our most savage, even at our most reflective, brandishing mirrored shields at your best Medusing guise. Yes, I know well the properties of stone. Your Gorgon scalp of strings made sculptures of men who refused me. All at once, I wish to massacre you and your conceited avatars when New York closes its polluted eyes without a beloved to watch me carry the moon and burn incense for your favor. So when the great sheets of light litter the world, he will write to me, and I him, more threaded poems, doing little to escape you.
Ah, powerful. I
Thank
love
you.
it. Just these wonderful, like, especially, you know, the images of Medusa, the images of desire, and I don't know, you just have such a knack again for just really being moving, and in so many of your choices. And I think, again, you know, this, I've known you for years, and this book was a long time coming. And while you've been published in so many places over the years, you know, poems like this, you know, poems that really encapsulate such an intimacy, such a, what feels so personal. I mean, what was it like putting these pieces together and deciding which of these moments really makes the cut?
That's a really great question, and that I think that it speaks to any writer who's trying to construct a manuscript. A lot of these poems are 15 or more years old, written some maybe like during undergrad, certainly before I entered MFA program. Um, it actually, there's kind of a little bit of a genealogy or lineage between this manuscript, at Anatomy of Want, and one I had started putting together when I was in high school, actually. That was called Poems in Love. And I just kind of like was determined. I had this conceit that I would be able to like publish a book of, not even conceit, I had this fantasy really, that I would be able to publish a book of poetry before the age of 25. That was this insane, dream that I thought, yeah, I mean, why do poets take so long to put a book out? I just didn't understand. Um, and then in learning to write, and so to speak, learning to craft words together, through undergrad, through the influencing poets that I worked with at NYU, namely like Scott Hightower, who was also like my advisor at NYU, realizing that some pieces weren't kind of up to snuff, and kind of having to, a manuscript is kind of this living document that you have to at some point abandon, and you're like, all right, I just have to let this kind of version like sit for a while and hustle that, which I did for a better part of 15 years. 15 years. I finished my MFA in 2006 or so, and the resulting creative manuscript I had produced to graduate is kind of the basis of this book. I think you kind of, at least for me, help to have input from some other writers, but also kind of get a sense of emotional landscape for the manuscript. I'm not particularly interested in poetry that is leaves you cold, that is without feeling for and so what I was kind of looking at in constructing this manuscript is kind of like, what are the notes, how just like romantic ones, but other urges, other kinds of clinging. And so I'm really kind of, ecstatic and happy and surprised and everything when it was accepted for publication, again, for hustling it for so long and getting close. I mean, it was like a quarterfinalist and a semifinalist a couple times for different like book awards and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know how much longer I can wait.
So let me ask you then, this is sort of the creative meat from a few years ago. And, this year is kind of a banner year as you get older. How is it looking back at this work? Like, now that you're sharing these stories, do you look at the you that was there when you were writing these moments, capturing these moments? Does it see it differently?
Yeah, yes and no. I think before the book was published, I would kind of like continually look at these poems and again like try to tweak them, and with the distance of time, be able to kind of look at the poem as the artifice that it is, and less entangled with what I was perhaps feeling at the time, so I can hone in on the craft of it. Some of the some of the ghazals was rewritten. I think the one in the dark was radically revised 10 years or so later, and then after that I was able to, once the book was published, I was able to kind of like be settled with it and like kind of leave it in the past. I look at the poems as kind of lovely reminders. They're kind of like mile markers of nostalgia. And I can look at them fondly, even if I kind of like um, grimace a little bit sometimes. I think that in general, like we kind of look back at our past loves and everything, and we kind of see mistakes and everything. But you have to embrace embrace that history and that memory, as well as the artifact that you created as a result of either that experience or that person or your experience of a person, you know.
I mean, that I think that sounds like, again, being able to approach poetry in so many different ways. And I think you have to. What I love that you bring to the craft, and really one of the things about your work that really speaks out is that intentionality. That you really bring an intentionality and a very I don't want to say delicate, because I don't think it's so much precious as much as it is that sort of detailed piece of really going into the language and kind of exploring it. And the cover image for me, the one by Eric Schwabel that leads off the book, really seems like a fitting introduction for the work, partially because it's fractured, it's reflective, and it's sexy, right? Like that's kind of all these things at the same time. And I'm always struck throughout your work about the ways you're tackling how desire divides us from ourselves and sometimes from others. And is that a fair way to approach the work in terms of that voice?
Yeah, I think what my work, and certainly what this manuscript has kind of really honed in on, is these like very quotidian and like the minutia of a wanting. And I'm kind of always just trying to like hone in on those things, those elements, those gestures, those moments, and then like extrapolate or explode them, and like see the love or the desire, the wanting, the pain, the sorrow, whatever that happens, that are that ripple through in those moments. One of my poems kind of has this moment, and I think that's very familiar to queer people, which is when you want someone, especially when you're younger, and you just find your knees touching, and it's just like, it just reverberates through your body. And I'm trying to recapture that moment that I think is pretty common, not just in my experience, but a lot of people's experience. And it's a kind of a common signifier or experience that we all can like, empathize or sympathize with. Yeah, I mean, it's just a topic, I'm not sure if that's the right word, of my work. And certainly there's just it all seems kind of connected that way. I don't know if future work is going to be so heavy on this, on desire and want, probably. But I kind of think about it in terms of like, in music, actually I was thinking about it, like Adele, when she was saying like about her most recent album. She's like, I wrote this breakup album 21, and like, how annoying would it be if all my breakup albums were about all my albums were about breakup, and so she's like, 25 is really about like loving and forgiving and whatever myself, and I am apprehensive and guarded in a way about being kind of one note about my work. And so my next manuscript, I'm hoping it's a, I'm making an intention of kind of making it something different too.
Well, we don't want you to leave desire all behind, for sure. Because because again, I think it's so integral in so many ways, and there are different ways to think about desire, and there's a couple of those that I just want to unpack. One of them is sort of your desire to embrace tradition and also challenge it. And I think you said I always refer to it as guzzles, but is that the correct way to say them? To pronounce that form. Can you explain to people kind of what a guzzle is and why why they're so potent as a literary form, especially in the ones you've included in the book?
Yeah, I mean, I first fell in love with ghazals or ghazals, or I don't speak Farsi or Arabic per se, so I couldn't correct anyone's pronunciation per se. But I first fell in love with them after I heard and read the ones written by the late and great Aga Shahid Ali. What I find so compelling about the form is um, the and it's something that actually I'm really interested in general about poetry, is this kind of economy of meaning. You have to, in the form, each couplet is supposed to be its own independent poem. So you have to create an idea in 2 lines, and then these couplets are formally joined. They're kind of, I think Shahid had described them as like pearls or stones in a necklace. They're connected by this formal quality, like the repeating rhyme, the rhyme scheme or the meter. But they can be completely disparate. The topics can be different. You're kind of swept up by the musicality, or the compact, like I said, images or ideas that are just in like 2 lines of poetry. So I find it to be like this. I found it to be like a very kind of creative prison. It became a kind of gateway drug to other formal poems or poetry in general, because I suddenly was like, oh, I'm also interested in sonnets and stuff like that. In fact, my poem in the book, Accounts of Lucifer, is actually a sonnet series. You probably don't clock it per se, but like it is a sonnet series. So yeah, it was a kind of gateway drug for other formal poems, and I think that challenge, this other layer of challenge, love trying to express something through this kind of like formal prison, is really rewarding.
I mean, I love that, because I think that's really desire, right? Like desire through these constraints is actually where you get that sort of tension in that moment. Would you mind sharing one of the ghazals with us?
Sure. Let's see. Let's go with In the Dark. In the dark. Not just mine, but your intentions stain in the dark. Rechristened temptation gathers like rain in the dark. By what regime of lotions, genes, or God are such soft slopes justified in being vain in the dark? Smash the dinner plates for this extinguished distance. I'll pour the shots, darling, to drain in the dark. The clothes measure a man, says who, when patterns from paisleys to pinstripes are all plain in the dark. O blameless boy, of the bare way we failed you, you were, with no wind, a weather vane in the dark. Wherever God's hiding the cure for your death sentence, for you I'm overturning every grain in the dark. When all else is hijacked, I'll leave you the hymn. Their ear never loses the refrain in the dark. Is the dark pitiless to prolong the punishment? Reliving your whisper is worth the pain in the dark. Before caving in to lips pursed into apology, give me a chance to at least complain in the dark. Silence, be warned, is a consummate politician, an ally in light, bane in the dark. A toast to ignorance for prolonging bliss. Why sober thrill if we remain in the dark? I fall into fantasy. How do I know? You're saying this word, yours, Daniel. Could you explain in the dark?
each one I love, again, brilliant, and thank you for sharing that. Like, again, I think each one, I love that you referenced Daga Shahid Ali, and really his just a beautiful work to reintroduce to many people the power of this form. And this poem really does, like, every stanza just really carries with it this beautiful weight, and each one almost again, I think, coming back to that cover image, to me, these pieces of fracture, each one is sort of tackling a different moment of this feeling, of this experience, of this desire. And I think it's just so powerful to me. And there really is so much sexiness in this book. Like, there really is so many moments of what I'm not, and I would fail to be transparent to not acknowledge and thank you for a dedicated poem. but I am, thank you, and I will not ask you to read that one, but I will blush is what will happen. I would be a lot of blushing.
I don't mind reading it if that's what you're suggesting. Because you're already turning red. The viewer, listeners can't
Well, you
see.
mentioned the red-haired earlier, so now, like, I'm like, us gingers are like,
Yeah. You're all over this manuscript, Shane.
I'm gonna blush all over the place now. Is what is gonna happen. But I'm not alone in there. And I think that there's so many men who've drawn out sort of your lingual skills, and I think it's a beautiful compendium of these different feelings and emotions. So what is it about men, and not only queer men, but really that gets pen to paper, like that gets you, I guess, moved in that way? Like, is there something in you that feels like it needs to share this story?
I mean, I think it's somewhat a common source for anyone, but to write about love and desire and want. But I think with queer people, queer men, where our identities, our sexual identities, call into question our feelings um, in the world. It's a contentious, confusing, and fruitful kind of emotional space. And we feel compelled to write it, whether it's in poetry or in other kinds of prose or narrative. I just think that it's a place that one can easily go. I think the challenge is to kind of take that energy, those anxieties, those feelings, and then really craft it. Like, to make sure you're navigating around, something that can be holy saccharine or purple prose, or something that's not particularly enlightening or something. Like, I'm sure, like, you can, like, look at, like, some of your first poems that you've ever written, maybe your first love poem or something, and like and just, like, want to just gouge your own eyes out in your own ears, kind of, for what you put together. I mean, I'm pretty sure I could find, like, my first love poem, and I know it was a sing-songy kind of ode to a girl. I mean, obviously pre-gay. Like, like this, just, it was a a topic that I can, like, um, um the energy of, like, wanting something that I could kind of hone, like, to, like, sharpen and then be able to put it to paper. And even though I wasn't really kind of really feeling this girl, ultimately, it was enough of a kind of, like, creative force to, like, put something down, to write something. And I think it's, like I said, I think it is a pretty common um, source of inspiration, for people. But to kind of, like, dive into it, I think queer people have hopefully, to a degree, less of kind of, like, a level of self-reflection that is demanded of ourselves, and that we can, like, investigate that and then translate that into a poem. So
In that space though, isn't
Yeah.
there also liberation? Like, do you feel also a sense of liberation around it? And also, the inside of me is just dying because I did not know the high school you, but I can just imagine the high school you scrawling out
Junior high
junior
me.
high
Junior high
you
me. Yes.
scrawling out these sort of little poems. I remember the name of my first poem, and I quickly moved on to writing much better poems. But I remember.
What was the name of it? What was the title of it? I can tell you my first poem.
So embarrassing. Mine was the Sweet Beauty of Death. It was.
Emo for Phil. Emo for Phil. Oh my God.
It was every bit of the over dramatic, like, just, I came out of English lit classes and was like, I can do this. I'm gonna go ahead and write this just grotesque, pubescence, sprawled out on a page.
Right.
I still have it somewhere. Like somewhere I still have it scrawled, I'm sure.
I'm sure. I mean, basically what happens at that age is like you fillet yourself open and then you insist on walking around and dumping your innards to everyone to see and like, come here and be a vulture to my interior, but pay attention, so it kind of doesn't really matter that the quality of your guts are, you just like want someone to like pay attention and peck, right? So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you actually shared that poem with anyone, and maybe you did, and certain I did. I actually shared my first poem with.
Oh no, mine is locked up. Like, it's in a notebook that probably will get burned when I die. What is probably should be so what was your first poem? What was the name of your?
It was called, and I'm gonna say her name. It was called Maria,
Oh.
and I'm friends with this person still. I mean, at least I still I'm connected to her. I've known her since elementary school. It's called Maria, and I'll give you the first two lines. Maria, you're just like me. I wish I could have you for eternity. That was the first.
Oh.
Don't you just want to like find a wooden stake and just like plunge it into your heart facsimile? It's just so over the top.
You throw a dance beat under that, and you have a Lady Gaga song.
Can I sell that to Rihanna? Right? Let's work this out. Like, maybe I can make money as a poet after all by selling my old poems from like 12 years old.
It's funny you mentioned that though, because poetry has been so integral to your life. Like, it's really, ever since I've known you, this is just a piece of who you are. And so again, I've seen this book in print and having it out there for people to read and sort of hear your voice. How have you incorporated poetry throughout your life, which has had many different, variations, and you've lived in many different cities now? Like, why is it so important to you?
It's interesting because I'm actually, I'm not very prolific. At least I hadn't been. I was in Seattle for 5 years before I moved here to New Orleans, and I wrote like maybe 5 poems in 5 years. It was just, as beautiful as that city is, it's kind of, it was really detrimental to my writing creativity, or just actually creativity in general. And then when I moved here to New Orleans, in 5 weeks, I wrote 5 poems. So my output was so much better. And I think, I'm not sure why that was, and poetry for the most part has historically been an outlet for me to kind of reconcile or understand my suffering, my depression and stuff like that. And I guess in Seattle I was just too happy or something, and so I wasn't really writing a lot. And oddly, I'm very happy here, and I still was able to write, but I in terms of topic, I've been able to write about other things. Yeah, I mean, I'm really actually promiscuous in terms of like what kind of arts that I kind of engage in, because I've been writing poems since like elementary school or so, and it's always kind of been an outlet for me to kind of like put in writing and then understand, reflectively, who or what I was thinking and feeling. But initially I had entered NYU or gone to NYU for photography. I wanted to I wanted to make images. So I kind of always had this approach to creativity as I can do anything as long as I can kind of produce or whatever, produce it. And I think I stick with writing is it's some of the kind of least expensive ways to express oneself. That's certainly one of it. I definitely don't need film. At least back then, you know, we needed paper and chemicals and stuff like that. This is obviously before the digital age. To create work, but I think there is something really challenging, interesting, and powerful about taking these this interiority and crafting it so that it can communicate and become an experience for another person, not just like something that you read and like you can digest and can communicate something specific or something interesting or um, or incite. I mean, to me, what makes a poem great is when the poem becomes an experience as well. Like the first poem I've ever was really moved by was Aga Shahid Ali's Lenox Hill. It's a canzone. I think it's called canzone. It's a poem that he wrote about his mother's death. And I remember first reading this. I was at the Barnes and Noble on Union Square in New York, and I'm starting to cry in the store, and I'm like, I need to find a corner to not be this like weeping mess. But like as it devastated me, I was like, that was a fucking great poem. Like it just destroyed me. And I was like, that's the kind of poem I want to write. That's the kind of poetry I want to write. I want to write lines and poems that devastate, whether it's from joy or sadness or whatever. And this is what like this kind of economy of meaning, which connects to guzzles, that I'm really interested in. And like, how do you put so much in like an image or an idea that it just levels you? Yeah.
And well, your book is filled with many of those moments. Like there are just really compelling, and some of them very short. Like there's I'm gonna look up here. There's a piece in here that is like 4 lines. I mean, remember, yeah, the Gospel of Mark, right? Like that is just beautiful. There's another one. I'm trying to remember that. There's a horoscope, I think, and that's the one I'm probably a little biased about, right? Yes. So there are these ones that you have that are just these really sort of just little nuggets that like you said, economy of words that just punch in the gut and at the same time just feel, and I don't know if this is what you're like, at times like a connection but slightly disconnected. And it's like this like floating over the moment at the same time. Is there one that really like sticks out in the book for you? Is there one that you're like, every time I read this, I can't? Is there any that really?
I mean, there are certainly couplets and guzzles that I even impress myself where I'm like, oh yeah, I fucking wrote that shit, I think Gospel of Mark is actually a great example too. It is 4 lines, and I'll read it. Gospel of Mark. And then you stayed, requiring a new metaphor to detail the danger. Glorious as a halo, how you make men pray in a noose of light. Now, what people don't, unless you read it, the pray isn't P-R-A-Y, which is what you would think in Gospel of Mark. It's saying it's P-R-E-Y, right? It's how you make men pray in a noose of light. Like taking just a homophone changing the A to an E and like radically changing the understanding of the poem, or creating a lot of space to kind of get a feeling of what that means, how you make men pray in a noose of light. Also taking light as something like constricting, like, yeah, I mean, I don't know where that came from. I just had like this moment of like inspiration or genius or whatever you want to call it. I mean, the Mark in that Gospel of Mark is also a very specific person. I didn't write the dedication to him, but like I had someone specific in mind.
So I have to ask, because some of these are written to people, do most of the people who are in this book know that they have a poem about them? Or are you, because I've got a couple poems that there are a couple people who don't know, even though they're mentioning them. I don't talk to them anymore, but there's like one called Charles Got Fat, which was just really making myself feel better about an ex-lover who I'm sure is not like this. He's not but he was always so pretty. And I was like, oh, but I can never share that with him. But do you have have you shared this with some of the I guess people they're written about?
I would say 99 to 100%. I can't. I'd have to like double check and but I would say like 99% of the poems that are about someone or inspired by those persons have read them, or I've shared with them. Because I mean, I don't know, somewhere along the lines I decided that there's no, the point of to a degree, the point of poetry is being able to share it, and there's nothing more audacious and perhaps brave than no, this is the adult version of flaying oneself and letting your guts be pecked by everyone, right? Like, this is a poem and I wrote this about you. And it may not be how I feel about you now or whatever, but this was kind of a real thing. Yeah, I would say a good, 99% of the people who I've either dedicated their poems to, or the traces of those people are in poems I've shared with them. I think that I'm perhaps more audacious than most, where I'm just like, how you like me now?
Well, and our listeners might not know, you have, I'm not going to say flayed yourself, but we will say marked yourself, that they may not know about your tattoo of saudade. But I know that word has always meant so much to you. And there are moments in the collection where you really revel in connection, but there's obviously a lot of desire here. And there's a lot of, again, sort of a disconnected sense of desire, or at least to sort of achieving that. Can you share what saudade means and maybe how it impacts the power and the movement in your writing?
Yeah, I think why it's such a when I first kind of discovered the word, this was as a result of being completely in love with and obsessed in love with a friend of mine. This is way back when, during undergrad, and he's half Brazilian, and so I just became infatuated with all things Brazilian, and especially bossa nova. And bossa nova, a lot of Portuguese, Brazilian, Cape Verdean, they sing about saudade, and saudade has a particular resonance for me because I feel that my relationship to desire is somewhat reflected in the concept. Being a Buddhist and understanding desire to be an entanglement, saudade is a kind of entanglement. Saudade, how it was once explained to me quite beautifully by a barista actually in the West Village many years ago. He said, or he said, saudade is a desire for someone, or and longing, maybe a nostalgia for someone who is left and you don't know if they'll ever return. And there is a kind of theory that the word comes from the sailors who left during the Age of Discovery, and their wives and girlfriends and loved ones that they left behind didn't know whether or not they would ever return. So they would have saudade for them. They don't know if they're ever going to return, but it's no longer a source of pain. It's no longer a source of suffering, because they have to continue on with their lives. So that's kind of like my feeling towards desire in a way. Like, I see it as an entanglement. It flees me, um, and I kind of return to it on these occasions in poems, in art. But yeah, I think it's just like love or desire, whatever. Saudade specifically has a very kind of particular conceptual resonance in me and the work, and how I understand desire in general, like as something that reason, if you don't know if they'll return, whether it's a specific object of desire in terms of a person or a kind of a general feeling. Yeah.
Is there we could keep this conversation on for a long time because I have lots of other questions around your saudade and the way in which you sort of share that. Is there a poem that you would like to close with that you feel maybe encapsulates some of that within the book? Because I mean, I could think of several in there that I think are just gorgeous representations of, in a sense, not just desire, but really like what that means in terms of that connectedness, but also such a confidence and a peacefulness in some ways with it. So I would love to share that with other people and close out our time. Thank you again for taking time to share with me. It's always exciting to talk about your work. You are such a talent. And I'm so grateful to have known you all these years and watched you evolve and develop and be the just powerful person that you are today. So thank you for that, and sharing this work.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Shane. I'm so happy to share this conversation or have this conversation with you. It's such a privilege, and you bring such insights and great questions as well. I'll read Death of Saudade. Why it's called Death of Saudade is because in Portuguese, to rid yourself of saudade, you have to matar, you have to kill the saudade. That's how they say it in Portuguese. And so this is called Death of Saudade, and I think is a good way to kind of close this out. Death of Saudade. One by one, the watches expire as though they had not been stamping the cadence of time, but erasing the seconds to at last.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane, for being a fantastic interlocutor. That was such a good conversation. Wow, you guys covered a lot of ground. I loved all the juvenilia stuff. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm gonna kind of close us out, but I just wanted to ask if either of you had any last things you wanted to say before we say goodbye.
Daniel, get some more books out. I think that's what I want. I look forward to some future volumes of your work. And I already follow you, but I encourage everyone else to get out there and follow you and all of your social channels and learn more about what you're bringing to this world. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I am working on a manuscript loosely. It definitely has a little bit more of a, I would say, social bent, social awareness, some older poems, but really kind of constructing it to be kind of at two things right now. Something a little bit more socially aware, and also a little bit more of a kind of love letter to New Orleans. Even though I've only been here since December, I'm just in love with this place, and it's been so inspiring that I just can't help but want to write about it. So yes, and again, thank you, Shane and Maddie, SKYLIT Books, and for having me here on the SKYLIT podcast.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, we're going to say goodbye, but it was so great to be here with you both today. And Daniel's book is The Anatomy of Want. You can order that from SKYLIT Books on our website, www.skylitbooks.com. And we hope you will keep an eye on Daniel for his forthcoming collection soonish, maybe.
I'll have to write most of it, but it's starting, and maybe in like 10 or 15 years, who knows?
So be patient, but it'll be worth the wait.
And pick up an Abby. So that's
All right. So we're going to say goodbye. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next SKYLIT.
Thank you for listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylitbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.